Hi guys, I'm Daniel, and today I'm going to talk about the Premier League and explore the Premier League shift towards a salary cap. I'm going to divide this topic into six parts: financial problems, how can the salary cap benefit, lessons from US leagues, what the Premier Leagues, risk and path forward, and finally the conclusion. Over the past decade, the Premier League has become the richest, most competitive, and most widely watched soccer league in the world. However, the fact that almost every team loses money each year has made league officials realize they face serious financial problems. As a result, the league is now exploring the possibility of implementing the salary cap, and this salary cap will actually be applied this season. This project explores why the Premier League should consider adopting a salary cap, a model common in US leagues such as the NBA and NFL and so on. It examines the financial pressures facing teams, the league's competitive balance, and key differences between the Premier League and other European soccer leagues. The goal is to understand what is driving this shift and whether it could benefit the league. First, let's talk about the financial problems in the league now. Due to these two charts, as you can see in the slide, they are from BBC and they are on the season of 2022 to 2023. Most of the teams in the Premier League are creating losses during season, obviously. The only teams that are actually making profit are the Leicester City and Brighton Club. What's more, the Leicester City is the team that is relegated this season, which means that the club isn't spending a lot on team's roster, and two is really a small number considering the total amount of clubs in the league. Plus, the second picture shows that only Manchester City and Fulham Club didn't have that. That's a very unhealthy one. So, what are the specific problems? First, while the Premier League's revenue has grown significantly year after year, overall profitability remains elusive. In the 2023 to 2024 season, the league generated £6.35 billion in the revenue, but still recorded a total loss of £153 million. The main reason is rising player wages. Total salaries for non-relegated teams increased by 7% that season, reaching £4 billion. The second problem is that league-wide losses have fallen sharply in recent years from 750 million to 150 million pounds in just 1 year, but this improvement is uneven. Only a handful of teams turn a profit, often through one-off events. For example, Chelsea reported a profit in 2023 to 2024 by selling their women's football club. While Manchester City profited in 2022 to 2023 because they won the Champions League title, which gives them a big amount of money. The last problem is that the financial stability varies across the table. The top teams either make small profits or intermanageable losses thanks to the Champions League revenue. Upper middle teams often control wage spending and compete in Europa League, which is the second level international cup games, which limits their losses and can even lead to promotion to the Champions League as the champion of the Europa League can participate in the Champions League next season. In contrast, lower middle teams suffer heavy losses because the broadcasting revenue is tied to league position and many owners have limited financial resources. And what's more, they are not able to be competing in the international tournaments, so they don't have ability to win prize money from those games. But finally, newly promoted teams may earn significant revenue in their first season because their income is improving greatly. But because the Premier League has become more close, like almost all the teams re that get into the Premier League last season will often be relegated the following year, losing much of their financial gain. Even though there is a parachute policy, it doesn't help much. So the next question, how can the salary cap solve these problems and benefit the league? First, we need to introduce the salary cap. A salary cap is a rule that limits the total amount a sports team can spend on player salaries. Its purpose is to keep spending in check and maintain competitive balance in the proposed Premier League model. The cap would be tied to 5 times the amount earned by the lowest earning clubs from the league's central broadcasting commercial deals. For example, if this rule was applied that last season, and Southampton earned 3.6 million pounds last season. So the salary cap would have been set at 518 million pounds. Mm, then we may need to consider how can this salary cap benefit the league. Let's first look at some history. Many fans have a concern that maybe the player salary will decrease greatly after they imply a salary cap, but actually not. Here is a chart of the average NBA salary by year on the left of the slide, and you can see they are increasing almost every year. The NBA first implemented a salary cap in 1984, and due to the chart, the average NBA salary increased greatly in almost every season, especially after 2016, the era that the streaming media started to rise. So if the Premier League also implements a salary cap, they are very likely to copy the success of the NBA due to Premier League's great global influence. So let's talk more specific about the benefits. First, a salary cap can improve competitive balance and increase the likelihood that more teams can win trophies. Actually, if you look at the champions in last 6 seasons, you can see that Manchester City MCI has won 4 league titles and Liverpool 2, illustrating a concentration of success. A salary cap would make matches between equally strong teams more common, increasing excitement for fans. And actually, only Aston Villa, Manchester City, Man United voted against this proposal about the salary cap, and Chelsea abstained because they are the teams that are spending a lot way more than other clubs to maintain their um, competitiveness and global influence. The second benefit that a salary cap could also limit the impact of wealthy foreign investors, such as those from Saudi Arabia who often spend heavily from prestige rather than profits. For example, like Newcastle United and Manchester City, they have a boost on their competitiveness after they receive the investment from Saudi Arabia. But this also raises a concern about the fairness. So if they imply a salary cap, it will reduce the extent to which spending can extort the league without fully discouraging the investment. Finally, it's about the wage control with significantly improved financial health. Total league wages in 2023 to 2024 increased by 8%, which is about 165 million pounds. But the 5 teams with the highest wage views accounted for roughly 36 of the total wages, as you can see in the chart on the left side of the slide. So, limiting excessive spending by top paying clubs could substantially reduce overall wage costs. Next, let's talk about lessons from US leagues. First, let's learn something about the NBA salary cap. What is an NBA salary cap? In the NBA, there are basically 5 lines from low to top. First, the minimum team salary. It's obvious that it asks the owners to pay enough money to the players and avoid occurrence of too little investment that might cost partiality. This limit is 90% of the salary cap, and difference between the line and the real wages will be paid to the players. However, they don't earn biennial exceptions and the non-taxpayer middle level exceptions as they earn all of the other exceptions. The second is the salary cap, and I don't think I need to explain that too much. It's just the main spending limit. The next is the luxury tax, which means that the team needs to pay extra costs for big spenders. The fourth one is the first apron. Teams over this line, which is the 127% of the salary cap. They lose most of their rights except the revised minimum contracts and rights of signing rookies. Plus, they can also use their taxpayer middle level exceptions, cash and sign trade rights, but they won't be able to get over the second apron, which is the last line after they use these rights. Okay, obviously the last line is the second apron, which is about 134 about of the salary cap. Teams over the second apron can only use their bird rights, minimum contracts, and rights of signing rookies. And for greater completeness, teams that get over the luxury tax line three times in the last 4 years need to pay extra tax. Actually, this is very usable. For example, the Golden State Warriors, GSW, which is a very famous basketball team in the NBA, they pay $748 million for the luxury tax in the last 11 years because of this rule. They actually don't need to pay this much if this rule doesn't exist. So, to be more specific, in the leagues like NBA, the salary cap is linked to the league revenue. So, this is a thing that the Premier League can learn from it. Each year, 48 of the total revenue is divided by the number of the team to set the cap, which can increase by a maximum of 10% annually. So, if the teams they're applying this rule to the game, the players will be more focused on making the league better. Um, and the teams exceeding certain limits will lose rights, as we can see in the NBA salary cap in the last slide. They are losing a lot of exceptions and rights, so the Premier League may adopt similar penalties, such as restricting transfer freedoms for overspending clubs. And except for NBA, there is also a league called Major League Soccer MLS in the US, which is actually just a soccer league, as you can see from the name. And each team is allowed three designated players whose wages do not count toward the cap, a rule that could help the Premier League clubs remain competitive in European tournaments. So the next question, why the Premier League? Why is the Premier League first applying the salary cap but not other soccer leagues? First, let's see this chart here, which is about wages vary considerably among top 20 clubs by total wage costs. As you can see in this chart, nine of the top 20 clubs by wage costs belong to Premier League, and six of the top 10 clubs belong to the Premier League. However, there are actually five mainstream leagues in Europe. That shows an incredible competitiveness of the Premier League in the soccer world, making them undoubtedly the best soccer league in the world. Even clubs that are relatively weak in the Premier League, such as Everton, which is this club, it was almost relegated in the past few seasons, but it survived and they made into the top 20 in this ranking, showing that every club in the Premier League literally has its own competitiveness. So, what are what is the reason that Premier League apply a salary cap? Obviously, they are currently the strongest soccer league in the world, with more team capable of competing internationally than any other leagues. Even lower ranked Premier League have more financial power than mid tables team in other top leagues. For instance, newly promoted Sunderland AFC, they invested 140 million euros in transfers this summer, more than 18 La Liga teams, including Barcelona, the famous one. And the second reason is that other leagues rely heavily on the few globally recognized clubs to attract fans. In the German league, only Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund have major international followings. In French leagues, it is mostly Paris Saint-Germain, and in Spanish league, it's Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Atletico Madrid. And these three leagues are those top leagues in Europe. So the salary cap in these leagues would mainly restrict top teams without benefiting weaker ones. And the Premier League, by contrast, have a broad base of globally popular team, which making it better positioned to maintain fan interest, even if the gap between clubs narrows. So, what about the risks? While a salary cap would improve us financial stability and competitive balance, it carries risk. Clubs may seek loopholes, such as inflated sponsorship deals to get around spending limits. Additionally, if caps are set too low, the leagues could lose its ability to attract the best players, weakening its global appeal. Once more, competitiveness in Champions League may also lessen, as top teams in the Premier League may lose some of the crucial players due to the decrease of the total amount of money they can spend on their wage bills. To succeed and solve these problems, the Premier League can link the salary cap to revenue growth to maintain competitiveness. So that players will work hard to maintain the league's image, and salary cap will also grow in a way that won't damage the quality or the competitiveness in the uh, top tier, top tier international tournaments. What's more, there are also still more solutions. I'm not going deep here, but I'm going to mention some of them. They are enforcing strict penalties for overspending, allowing limited exceptions to keep clubs competitive internationally, monitoring and adjusting the system regularly due to the changing situation to address unintended consequences. So, in the conclusion part, I would like to address some thoughts as a fan of both Premier League and the NBA. I think that a salary cap will definitely make the Premier League more impartial and exciting. Right now, only a handful of clubs can realistically compete for the title because they spend way more than everyone else. If wages are capped, smaller clubs would have a real chance to challenge, which would make every match more unpredictable. It might upset some clubs, big clubs, but in the long run, it will keep the competition healthier for fans. And that's what I want to address today. And thank you for listening.